Hi, and welcome to CFM Map Creation Techniques. In this lesson, we will going to cover the keyer. This keyer will actually give you the ability to use several keyers inside within one single node. So in this case, we have the red, green, and blue keyers, red screen, green screen, and blue screen keyers. The default that is the luminance key, saturation keyer, max keyer, and min keyer. We're going to concentrate on the basic ones that we're going to be using for this class, like the green screen keyer, and also the luminance key. To use this node, the first thing that we got to do is we got to set our project. So usually we look at our plate to set the project settings. So we're going to go ahead and hit S and change our project to 1920 by 1080. Depends on the plate that you're using. In my case, I'm using a different plate that you guys will. Now that I have my project set, make sure that we have the proper frame sequence. So when we hit play here, you will see that our project sequence is 1 to 25. So we need to set our frame to 1 to 25. So make sure that is your frame range. The next thing that we got to do is make sure that your project setting says 24 frames per second, or the FPS is 24. Now that we have everything set and done, it's time to pull a key. So in order to create a keyer, it's very simple. Go to the menu, the key menu, and look for the keyer node. Now that you have the keyer node, connect the input to the image. Now, in order to see its results, you need to select the viewer and hit A to see the alpha channel. You will see that right now the only thing that we're looking at is luminance values because the operation is set to luminance key. So if we tweak any of these elements, the only thing that we're doing is just exporting or extracting the luminance values from lighter to darker tones. Now, you can use the graph, we call it the range graph, to adjust the low and high pixel values of the matte. The A handle will clip or control your black points that are equal to 0. So what it means is any value below this value here will go into black. And you can use your B handle, that is on the top here, to actually control or clip to white. So any value above this value, in this case this value, will go to pure white. The default position lets you control the low and high values, assuming your image has a distinct light and dark areas. However, sometimes the subject of the matte falls into the mid-gray areas, and that's where the C and D handles lets you shift the center of the high values of the key. So for example, if we move this here, we could actually shift this values using the D and the C. But the majority of the times we won't touch those, and we're only going to concentrate on A and B. Alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull a key. In this case, we have to kind of determine what we need. And we need a green screen keyer. Now that we have the green screen keyer, I'm going to go back to A, and we're going to see that there's not enough contrast. So we're going to start proceeding to pull up the A handle. And essentially what we're doing is we're actually pushing those values that were in the mid-grays up here. If we sample, we will see these values on the alpha, 0.8. And essentially what we're doing is taking those values and we're pushing those to black, trying to clip all those ranges to black point. Okay? And then the B values, we're trying to clip those to white, without trying to not destroy the edge. After we have pulled the key, let's go back into the color version. Nothing happens with the image. So what we need to do is we need to create a new pre-multiply node after the keyer. So hit tab and pre-mult. And there we go. There's our green screen with our key. So creating a pre-multiply node and connecting its input to the keyer, where essentially what we're doing is we're telling the new alpha and the RGB channels to be multiplied together. So our new alpha contains zeros and ones. These are our black areas and our white areas. And we multiply this by using a pre-mult by the RGB values, that is the color values. So anything multiplied by 0 will be transparent, or will go away, and anything multiplied by 1 will stay the same. So this will allow us to be able to place this new image that we generated an alpha for, and on top of another image. So in order to create the compositing, the next thing that we got to do is we need to generate the color bars. So hit tab on your keyboard and type color bars. This is used for test purposes only. The next thing is create a new merge node by hitting M on your keyboard. Input A, we will use the actual new key, or the element that we want to put on top of input B. So in this case, we want this image to be on top of the color bars. So we will connect the foreground element, that are the characters, to input A, the background element to input B. And we're going to set the merge operation to over. Okay, that is the default operation. And then hit 1. And now, as you will see, we'll have the actual characters over the background now. And because we did the pre-multiplication, now everything looks correct. The next thing that we got to do is, we're not going to go too far in depth with this keyer, it's just to show the basic scenario. What we're going to do is we're going to render out this keyer. In order to render it out, what you need to do is create a new write node by selecting the merge operator and hitting W on your keyboard. Now that you have this node connected, the next thing is you need to browse the file in location where you plan to save your file. So I'm going to do it in my own desktop, but you're going to follow your own naming conventions, or the naming conventions of the project and the naming guidelines. If you decide to use this keyer, you make sure that you follow the naming conventions. So it's going to be your last name underscore your first name. So in this case, for me, will be P. Flores or Pedro Flores. So Flores will be my first, or my last in this case, and Pedro will be my first. And underscore, and the name of the project. So if this project is project number 3 or project number 4, you're going to use nuke or NK 03 or 04. It depends on which keyer you decided to use. In this case, we were using keyer, so it's project 4. And it's going to be an MOV file, so you need to make sure to write the extension .mov. And then hit save. Automatically, Nuke will populate the settings that we need in order to output this video. Change the actual color space to the default color space you're using. So in this case, the color space is sRGB, so we're going to be using default color space sRGB. The next thing is the codec we need to use is H.264, so make sure you click on the codec and change it to H.264. Go to the advanced settings and turn off the keyframe and limit data rate, and make sure to set the quality to best and hit OK. Next thing you need to do is you need to go ahead and hit render in order to output your specific file. So it's 1 to 25. Then hit OK to render it. Nuke will go through the sequence and it will calculate it, and it will actually output your final file based on that sequence. The next thing that we need to do is we need to output an alpha channel. Like we said before, this keyer you could use it for any situation. If by some reason you can't work on your full version and you're using the PLE, you will be able to use the keyer, but you won't be able to use the Primat or Keylight in order to do your key. But the keyer will actually give you enough to be able to work with the final project. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and take a look at the result. When I look at this, there we go. Now, we never clean the edges or work around the edges or refine those, so right now I'm not worrying about that. I'm just showing you how the keyer works. Okay. Look at the other videos, and you will see the edge refinement workflows, and you will apply that to the same in this keyer. Okay. Moving ahead, the next thing that we need to do is we need to output the alpha channel of this image. So if I go ahead and select the keyer and hit 1, we're loading that alpha channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another write node. So usually I could duplicate this one. All right. And connect it to the pre-mult node and hit 1. Now, what we need to do is right now, the alpha is not going to be outputted. So in order to make it simple, we're going to create a new shuffle node, connect it in between the pre-mult and the write node, and switch all its inputs to alpha. That way it will write out the alpha channel in the red, green, and blue channels as well. Then go to the write node, give it the final name here. So the other one was colored, this one is alpha. And it's going to be the same, it's going to be an MOV. We already set up all the settings because we just duplicated that. Hit render, 1 to 25, and we're going to let it go. When it's done rendering, now we will have two movies that is what you're going to use for submission. Remember that you need to tweak each individual key. So if you use the prime mat, you're going to be able to tweak the key. If you use the keyer, you're going to have to tweak the key as well and do edge refinements and so on and so forth. We're only covering the basics here, but we want you to go a little bit further and take from every single video and kind of apply it to your final result. A good key is always a combination of keys. It's never one single key to get a perfect result. So that's going to be extremely important. So let's take a look at our final result. Now we have two videos. One will be our alpha, of course, is bad. And the other one will be our color. And that will be what gets submitted and graded for your final. This has been the keyer. I hope it helps you a little bit on the workflow, on the basic introduction to that. And see you on the next podcast to go over more advanced techniques.